Hey guys, Cody with CJC Off-Road. Today we have a very unique build for you. This is our first video on the Carli Suspension Dominator system, specifically built for the Power Wagon trucks. Now in the next few videos that we release, you will see us beating the absolute pulp out of our shop Power Wagon and putting this kit through its full paces. However, the customer truck, I don't think he would appreciate that, so we're just gonna show you guys front to back how the system goes together. Now this is a 75th anniversary Power Wagon. You'll notice the badging as well as the unique color. There are not too many Power Wagon specific systems on the market, and there's definitely not another option that has this level of off-road capability. This is the Carli Suspension Dominator system, which means it has 3-inch shocks at all 4 corners. What makes that unique is you're able to take this truck and actually exceed what is probably safe as far as high-speed off-road performance is considered. You could take this truck and hit a set of whoops that say a Razor or a purpose-built sand car, etc. could run on. You can now do that with your street Power Wagon truck while still maintaining excellent ride quality on road, which is something that is truly unique and very specific to the Carli suspension systems. Now let's not leave out, if you bought a Power Wagon, you probably plan on hitting some trails or competing with your local Jeep buddies. This truck is still fully capable of doing that, so you're not losing any of your technical or rock crawling ability with this truck. However, you're adding a whole nother layer of off-road high-speed capability, which is really cool. Also, who else doesn't love a 3-inch king shock underneath their street truck? It is a very unique thing and something you're not going to see too many times around town. Starting at the front of this truck, again, it has the King 3.0 shocks. Now these are completely custom built by King for Carli suspension. So it's got Carli's own pistons, all of Carli's own lengths and measurements, and their own tuning. Pair that up with Carli suspension signature soft ride coil springs. The front end of this truck is, in the coil springs as well as the shocks, are completely tuned for the front end weight of this truck. So it's not just a generic suspension, something we found that fits, or a diesel part where we just tell you what height it sits at on the gas truck. This is a truly specific gas coil and shock package. Now 3.0 shock will not just bolt onto the front end of these trucks. You're gonna notice Carli suspension includes a weld-on shock mount, so we actually cut off the factory subpart shock mount that actually peels off on some guys' street trucks, factory Power Wagons, and the like. We're swapping in a 3/16 fully boxed fabricated shock mount that actually pushes the 3.0 away from the axle, so you're not gonna hit the axle with this thicker shock. Looking at the top of the coil bucket, you're also gonna see a coil retainer that's been welded in. The factory coils in these trucks are a little bit wonky. The guys who have used these trucks heavily off-road will notice that sometimes the coil is actually trying to slide out of the truck. That's where Carli has a lathed up piece of steel that we're actually gonna weld into the coil bucket, and that's gonna make sure you can't chuck the coil out of this truck. Something that no other manufacturer does, and that is the benefit of buying a Carli suspension is them, along with us on some of our prototype trucks, have learned the hard way what happens when you run these trucks too hard. That is where some of these parts have come in to just add another layer of security and make sure that this high-end system that you're buying isn't gonna cause other issues on your truck. Now you're gonna notice we did not go with the Torsion Sway Bar on this build. That is because the Power Wagon does have its electric selectable sway bar, and this customer opted to keep that and avoid any dash lights. We have had a handful of customers swap out the Power Wagon sway bar for, say, the Carli Torsion Sway Bar. However, you will get a dash light, and I don't think, as of the present moment, there's a module to turn that off. Now this customer did opt to go for the Carli fabricated radius arms. There's a little bit of an online debate if you're going to be getting rid of the Power Wagon specific radius arm with that extra flex joint in the middle and swapping to a solid arm like the Carli arm. Is that going to reduce flex and the like? Typically we found that there's maybe a little bit easier articulation achieved with the Power Wagon specific radius arm. However, the gains are definitely not worth the cons. With the Power Wagon radius arm, you'll definitely notice some braking deflection, especially in the high-speed off-road. You'll feel like a little wash feeling in the front end. That is where the Carli fabricated radius arms come in. They get rid of that joint that kind of causes that weird feeling you feel in the front end and allows for a lot stiffer steering feel. And also for those of you who are putting a lot of road miles on the truck actually has a noticeable handling difference while driving on road. Lastly, that flex joint that is on the Power Wagon radius arms, we've seen them tear and then guys wear them out as well. There's actually not a factory replacement, short of replacing the whole arm. So that's where something like this is a much more serviceable arm as well. You'll also notice this customer went for both a Carli high and low mount steering stabilizers. For someone who intends to put a ton of road miles and off-road miles on this, these are both good options. Typically, most customers will just opt for one, whether they're running say an MT tire, they'll go with the high mount, or they're running like a hybrid type tire, they'll go with the low mount. However, if you do want the most damping in your steering, you're gonna go with the high and the low, and what that's gonna do is gonna cut back some of the steering wheel feedback you feel from these 37-inch tires, while also, still allowing the truck to turn easily left and right. It's also going to provide a slightly firmer steering feel, which is something a lot of guys prefer, especially people who have come from independent suspension vehicles. They're not quite used to that light steering feel that some of these trucks will get, especially when off-road. If you are stuck on which stabilizer you want or need, we do actually have an entire video dedicated to just that purpose, so hit our channel for that one. Moving on to the rear of the truck, that is where the system is very unique and unchallenged. You're gonna see that we actually pulled the shock out of the factory position, which puts it up through the frame. That doesn't really allow us to go with much bigger of a shock, and there are 2 new shock mounts that move this 3-inch diameter shock outboard from the frame rails. On the lower side, we have a bolt-on mount that piggybacks over your factory mount. It's actually a much thicker steel as well. And there'll be a weld-on mount on the upper frame side. This is gonna allow full suspension travel from a 3-inch shock, which is something, again, not even offered by anyone else on the market, but something that's very unique and probably what helps push this kit to be the baddest off-road suspension system for the new Ram 2500s. Now, one thing we did offer on this truck is the Carli Suspension R2 rear coils. Now, typically when you buy a 3¼ inch system, whether it's for the Power Wagon or for the diesel trucks, it'll come with a 1-inch lift rear coil. However, Carli did opt to produce what we call the R2 coil. It is a 2-inch lift coil with slightly higher capacity. What that does with the 2500 trucks, where they don't quite have the weight capacity of a 3500, those running like camper, shell setups and overland setups like what you see on this customer, or other unique setups, this is gonna add another level of hauling capacity. Now, for wheel and tire packages, we do have to be a little bit more delicate with this suspension system. With the Dominator system, where we outboard the rear shocks, it does say outboard of the rear frame. So typically when we talk about running 37s on a Ram truck with like the least amount of trimming, we're shooting for that high backspacing number like the CJC specific wheels. Those wheels will kind of not work in the rear end of this truck. Any kind of off-road movement or articulation would actually put the tire into the shock. So you'll notice this is a 17-inch double black method NV, which comes in 4 3/4 inch backspacing. That's gonna push this wheel out and give us all of the articulation space we need to not contact the shock. However, the front of this truck did require more trimming. This truck is fully capable of going off-road, articulating and not rubbing and things like that, but trimming is required for it. So for those of you who are concerned, you might want to factor that into your shopping process when looking at these systems. For a tire, this customer opted for the 37-1250 for 17-inch wheel, a Nitto Ridge Grappler. The Ridge Grappler, again, probably one of the most popular tires this year coming out of our shop. It does kind of come down to personal preference, maybe a Ford versus Ram or Nike versus Adidas kind of conversation. A lot of us here do tend to prefer the Nitto or the Toyo tires. This customer for the Nitto tire, this is an excellent tire for both off-road performance, highway noise, and it's a very well-rounded option. Again, I can't stress this enough, the off-road performance, specifically the high-speed performance of this truck and this system is now unmatched. There truly is an insane level of performance with this system, and honestly, if you really got comfortable with this truck, you might even want to consider putting a roll cage in it, depending on how hard you're going to use this truck off-road. Now, it doesn't mean this truck's not going to ride good on-road. Our shop trucks are all running these in our daily commuted about 45 minutes each way, and we do use them on the weekends to have a lot of fun as well. So don't think that this is a strictly off-road package. If you do really want to build a Swiss Army knife Ram 2500, this truly is an amazing system to look at. So some would say, why would I want a 3-inch shock or over a 2.5-inch shock? And that is the dynamic range they're able to put into the tuning. So in my opinion, this is probably the softest riding system out there, period, for Ram 2500, even on road. So typically when you do run smaller shocks, you can actually make them ride really good on road or really good off road, and you don't really have too much of a middle. Now with a 2.5-inch shock, you're actually gonna see that gap shrink, right? Where you're gonna hear us talk about good on and off road ride. However, the 3-inch shock really does push this to the next level. With a 3-inch diameter piston and shim stack, they're actually able to get a much higher range of performance out of the shock. So again, whether you accidentally miss the driveway at the gas station and drive off the curb, this truck's no longer gonna toss you away. It's gonna be completely controlled while still riding really well. That's what makes this such a cool system. Now this truck may look pretty, and I think it looks killer. This is a customer rig, so we're not gonna thrash on it. Keep an eye out for our next Power Wagon Dominator video, where you will see our shop truck getting some airtime and showing you just what these systems are capable of. If you do have any questions about this specific build, feel free to comment down below, shoot us an email, call us on the phone. We're happy to help. We do have a completely knowledgeable staff here to help you. Also, if you are a shop that is watching this video, we have a complete wholesale program to get these parts in your hands if you've never purchased a Carli product before.